episode of Moi TV, I'm gathering inspiration that you can use on the creative direction of your personal brand. Let's get into analysing the branding behind my top 5 favourite celebrity brands. If you're feeling a little bit confined or the idea of creating a personal brand feels a little bit like you're going to be trapped, then I promise you by the end of this episode, you're going to see how these top 5 favourite celebrities of mine have really built strong, robust and diverse empires as a result of using a personal branded approach. In a true nod to the sounds of the 60s, we're going to do a pop countdown from 5 to 1, looking at my favourite empire owning women. Taking position 5 on our chart today, I've picked Bethenny Frankel, whose empire is estimated to be worth $25 million. If you're like me and you share my guilty pleasure in The Real Housewives, then you might know Bethenny Frankel already from the New York franchise of this terrible reality TV show that I personally cannot get enough of. In fact, one of the things to note about Bethenny Frankel is that she has documented the rise of her empire by being part of this reality TV show franchise. Sure, there's a lot of catfights and drama, but that is a subtext narrative that goes with her particular character in the show. More to the point, from a branding point of view, what's interesting about Bethenny Frankel is that she was very clear from the very beginning, way back in, I think it was like 2008 or something when that particular franchise started. She set about creating a multifaceted brand by using a personal branding approach. Let's take a look at her empire. Now, there's some interesting little showbiz factoids about Bethenny that you probably didn't know. So she was actually a production assistant on Saved by the Bell. You remember that show? And then she went on to be the PA to Kathy Hilton. Part of her jobs in that role when she was very young was to take Paris and Nikki to school. But moving into how she's built her brand, and what I love about Bethenny's brand is it has the clearest structure of them all today. So she initially was a contestant on The Apprentice, which was hosted by Martha Stewart. She came in second on that show. And then in 2008, she started on The Real Housewives of New York City. She agreed a Bethenny clause with Bravo TV when she initially started with The Real Housewives of New York City. And this is now a well-known clause among any of the women in that franchise, but also within reality TV. And the deal was that she was getting paid quite a low amount of money for her appearance on that show, but she managed to make sure that Bravo would not get a percentage of any products sold under her name. So if you're a housewife and you appear in this franchise and you set up a new business, which a lot of them seem to do, Bravo is entitled to a percentage of that. Bethenny created the Bethenny clause and she said, no, you're not getting any of it. She has more recently appeared as an investor on Shark Tank, which is the US version of Dragon's Den. She comes in and out on that show. And you probably will know, if you're a fan of Real Housewives, she set up the Skinny Girl brand. Now, this was originally the Skinny Girl Margarita. And in 2011, she sold this Skinny Girl cocktail brand to Beam Global for $100 million, which was incredibly record-breaking. And it's made her one of the most successful Real Housewives. However, what she was really clever again with the Skinny Girl Margarita or Skinny Girl cocktail brand, because she managed to negotiate that she retained license of the brand name for other products. So she has more products in the Skinny Girl range. Before she went on to build that out, she managed to pop out an amazing 8 different books, all based around nutrition. She's done some fiction as well, and she has a book for her cocktails. She then set up the Be Strong Charitable Foundation, and that was in partnership with Delivering Good. So she most recently is doing an awful lot to support PPE production and delivery around America while everyone is still suffering from the COVID crisis. But prior to that, she chartered 50 planes to bring relief to those affected by the hurricanes in Puerto Rico in 2017. And she documented that as well on the Real Housewives show. What is interesting about the Be Strong brand is she has made it very clear that every single donor gets a full breakdown of exactly where every single dollar that they donate goes. And she says that this has dramatically spurred people on to want to donate more when they understand, the price of a bottle of water or something like that. They understand exactly where their money's going, so they start giving more money. That's one of the secrets, she says, that's made that so successful. Let's go back to looking at this Skinny Girl brand, though. She has daily supplements, snacks, face and body products, and shapewear products. So you can see the Skinny Girl, she's retained all of these sub brands within the Skinny Girl brand, and Beam has access to just this one element. And this structure is so impressive and so inspirational when you're carving out the way that you want your personal brand to work. Another interesting thing to note here is you can see a synergy between the Be Strong brand and the Skinny Girl brand. I thought this headshot went really well. It also has some of her corporate colours in there. That is just a happy coincidence. But I think this is a really interesting business model to watch. You can see I don't know if she has any other things in the work. I'm sure she does. But it will be interesting to see if she sticks with this strong, bold branding, and she comes out with different sub brands. But what's interesting about this, she's sitting at the top, yes, as an umbrella. She has different sources of income. She's using her appearances on television to bolster this business, but everything is coherent and really well structured. Taking chart position number 4 this week, I picked Sofia Vergara. Now, it's estimated that her empire is worth $180 million. It's true, I am a huge fan of Gloria Pritchett on the Modern Family show, which is one of the most famous roles that Sofia Vergara has played in, but I was shocked when I saw just how successful her business and her personal branding approach has been outside of her acting. Let's take a look at her empire. So I want to know if you know that Sofia actually set out to become a dentist. I don't know if you knew that. So in the 90s, while she was still studying near the end of her degree in that, she was approached to host a show in Miami. And this then opened up her career in movies and TV. Throughout the 90s, she hosted several different shows on the Univision network, which is a US Spanish network. She appeared in some different movies, and then she landed her spot on Modern Family in 2009, which is something that you probably know her best from. In 1994, however, while she was doing a little bit of TV, she co-founded Latin World Entertainment, and she co-founded that with a former music manager, and they set out to represent Latina talent much better. It's something that's hugely underrepresented in Hollywood. So Latin World Entertainment takes care of marketing, production, new media, which is a really interesting element to remember, as well as talent management. She then started securing all of these high paying sponsorship deals. So she's been featured promoting all of these different brands: Comcast, Head and Shoulders, Quaker, CoverGirl, McDonald's, and Sofia Aguila. And they were really lucrative deals. But what is really interesting to know, and this is where this ties in a little bit to the experience she's clearly picked up through the Latin World Entertainment, is this deal with Ninja Coffee Bar. So this is a coffee press, like a coffee device, and it's sold on QVC. It's priced at $179, but the deal that she cut with them about this is it's license based. So she was able to secure a percentage of all sales. Now, when this brand launched in 2019, they moved over 1 million products in the first 8 months, and a percentage of that was significantly larger than the very high one-off payments that she got from these brands that you see on the left. She hasn't stopped there though, and this is where the personal branding element comes in. And she set up Sofia by Sofia Vergara. She has jeans and basics, so underwear and basics that you would expect to see in Walmart. So she has done a deal with Walmart, and they distribute all of her clothing products. Now, 10% of her underwear sales is donated to the 7 Bar Foundation, and this is a foundation set up specifically to help economically disadvantaged women to become entrepreneurs through microfinancing. There's an element there of influence for good. She also has a fragrance line, and I've just been looking up some eyewear stuff that she's now promoting as well. What's really interesting about Sofia's personal brand is you can see she's used income. Well, initially she has her talents, but then she's used the income that she's created to build this personal brand and association with influence for good. And in 2008, it's a regular annual thing. She's the highest paid actress on TV. She's using all of those profits to build up her personal brands, and then she's skimming off the top of those, the money generated there, to help other people build their influence for good. In position number 3 on our chart this week, I've picked Reece Witherspoon. It's estimated that Reece's empire is worth $200 million. There are no flies on Reece Witherspoon, let me tell you. Let's take a look at how her personal brand works. So age 14 is when she did one of her first movies, which was Man in the Moon. And these are some of my other favourite movies that she did from the 90s. After securing some awards and some recognition, she was then given the global ambassadorship for Avon. Quite a big deal there. And then after that, as she's getting older and noticing that she's not booking as much in Hollywood, she sets up Hello Sunshine, which is Reece doesn't have her own personal brand per se, but this is the business that she's founded. And Hello Sunshine is a production company where she knows she can star in films that she's proud of. And their overall goal is to shine a light on female authorship and agency. So as a result of that, she recommends books by female authors and podcasts that are fully produced by women. And this has generated a speaking tour where she's talking about the business that she's created. She has a book club, so what you can go and see all of the books that she recommends. She does that once a month. And you can also subscribe to a Hello Sunshine newsletter. You will probably know Big Little Lies from the TV with HBO. This is produced as well with Hello Sunshine, and she recently starred in a really good movie about Cheryl Strayed, which was Wild, based on a book. She then set up a whole other business under a whole different brand. Draper James is her American themed clothing line, and she describes it as being steeped in Southern charm. And she actually has 5 different physical bricks and mortar retail stores all over the US. What I love about this brand is it's very independent. So when we describe an umbrella brand with different brands sitting under it, this is a great example to think about. If you know a fellow boss lady who has similar world domination plans to the ladies I'm talking about today in my chart countdown, then you might want to share this episode of Moi TV with her. When she's done watching it, she might want to take a look at how I approach personal branding from a creative direction perspective. Maybe she wants to sound her ideas off with me and help her come up with some really cool, solid plans. If she does want to do that, she's going to want to head to www.laurapearman.com/creative-consult. Taking chart position number 2 this week is Serena Williams. It is estimated that her empire is worth $200 million. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of tennis fan who is happy to get involved if I'm sitting with somebody who is really passionate about tennis, or I am on the promise of getting Pims and strawberries to eat whilst watching it. Otherwise, I'm not really that much of an avid fan.
Along with being one of the world's best athletes, Serena Williams has created an impressive empire for herself. Let's take a look at what her personal brand looks like.
What I love about the business and the way that she structured her brand is Serena is quite public in describing herself as very frugal with money despite her wealth, and also quite risk averse. So this is a really interesting way of structuring a personal brand. Let's get into it. You probably already know that Serena Williams is twice as successful as any female athlete on record, and she's made her initial wealth through her incredible tennis achievements: 39 Grand Slams, 23 singles, 14 doubles, and 4 Olympic gold medals. That's generated $93 million of prize money alone in tennis. But what's interesting in addition to that is the sponsorships she's secured. And she has sponsorships with the more obvious brands, so brands that have sports supplies or anything relating to tennis. JP Morgan, Chase and Co. is always a big brand you'll see when you're watching Wimbledon or any of the other Grand Slams. Interestingly, though, she is one of the athletes approached by Dr. Dre for the Beats brand, and this is something he did to make his business incredibly successful, was the right type of celebrity endorsement. Serena is one of those people. Bumble is actually part of Tinder, and I thought this was quite an interesting one to be associated with. But that has generated a significant amount of additional wealth for Serena. This is how she's used it. So she has initially got stakes in other sports. She is passionate about UFC, Ultimate Fighting Champions, and she's a passionate follower of the Miami Dolphins. So she bought some stakes in those. And then she started with some sub brands. So she has a ready to wear clothing brand, which is S by Serena. And she self funded that entirely. It's ready to wear, so it's direct to consumer, S by Serena. And then she went into the more cautious aspect of venture capital. So she has another Serena brand, and she has invested in more than 50 startups through Serena Ventures. So this was something she set up in 2014. She likes to focus on mainly women and minority led businesses, and she's invested $10 million. And these are some of the brands you might recognize. So Noom, I've just got into using Noom. Daily Harvest, which is all about healthful food, and Billy, which is a razor company. There are so many more interesting businesses that she has added finance to. I think you should go and take a look at her website. But this is a really interesting way to build out significant wealth, but also using different sub brands. So she's using her name, but she has these different brands because they pertain to different types of business, as well as using her name and her influence within these sponsorships. But quite similar to the way that Sofia's built her empire, she's used the wealth that she's generated from her talents and from sponsorship deals to do good with her money. But she's done it in a very cautious way. So instead of going out there and setting up multiple businesses, she's supporting businesses that she thinks deserve the support.
And stealing chart position number 1 this week, the Queen, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah's empire is estimated to be worth $2.7 billion. Here is a personal brand that has elements within it that have reached the maturity phase of their lifespan. And what's really interesting about the growth of Oprah Winfrey's personal brand is that it's ever growing, and that's helped by the way that it's been structured. Let's take a look in a little bit more detail about Oprah Winfrey's personal brand.
What I love about the way that Oprah has built up her personal brand, influence, and the way that she's structured her business is you can see it's a very clear cycle. Let's get into that then. So in 1976, Oprah was a presenter on a TV station in Baltimore, and AM Chicago saw her and decided to give her her own show in 1986, the Oprah Winfrey Chat Show. This is something I can remember from being a little girl. And one of the things that stands out to me is this little animation that used to come on at the end. But talking a little bit more about this, she managed herself entirely when she was the TV presenter. So she had no booking manager, publicist, agents, or business managers. Instead, she got one guy, Jeffrey Jacobs, to handle all of it. She didn't like the idea of giving 40% of her wealth away to all of these different people. So she got this Jeffrey Jacobs on board and he helped to manage it all for her. She then invested her first money and income from the Oprah Winfrey Chat Show into Harpo Studios, and she gained complete ownership over the chat show and the entire production of it. And what again is really savvy and interesting is she brought all of the usual external teams into internal divisions. So she developed a Harpo division for marketing, for production, for post production, and this created a very self sufficient and lean model. She had complete control of when she created her content. But what's interesting is she developed this production company into a conglomerate where Harpo could start creating movies and other shows as well as her own. While she was doing that, she also got a role in The Color Purple. This was a movie in 1985. It's a real tearjerker, just in case you have never seen it before. But then she began the OWN network, Oprah Winfrey Network. And this, she stopped the chat show in 2011 and she created OWN with Discovery Communications. Prior to that, in 2011, though, she started making real records with her wealth. So in 1995, she had generated $350 million and joined the US top 400 wealthy list. She was the first Black woman to ever do that. And then in 2003, she became an official billionaire. Now, let's just take a look at the sub brands underneath the OWN network. So, Oprah or Oh, That's Good is a pre prep food line that she had. Oprah's Book Club, internationally famous. If you get that orange O sticker on your book, it's probably going to be a bestseller. That's how much influence she has with that. O Magazine, this is still a really great read. She did a deal with Hearst to produce O Mag, and that came out in 2000. And then Oprah's favorite things. So this was initially a holiday gift guide, and she set that up in the late 90s, 1997. But this has now been sold. It was a feature on the show. And this has now been sold into Amazon Alexa, where Oprah will recommend different things that you can get each year for the holiday period for your family and friends. A really good example there of moving with the times. She then used the skills, and obviously she has this movie experience. She was part of Greenleaf, which was a 2016 movie, but that was actually produced by her network. She bought 10% of Weight Watchers and then donated 3% of her shares to the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, which is in South Africa. And if you listen to her podcast, I'm a big fan of her podcast, she often talks about the work that she's doing with her girls. These are the girls she's referring to. She's just since lockdown, she's done a deal with Apple TV. This happened, I think this started happening in 2018. But you can see here the cycle that she's been on. So every time she's built on her skills and experience, she's developed a whole selection of Oprah themed sub brands. There's obviously the theme of O or own, or there's that trend there. But then she's used these to parlay better deals and use her influence for incredible amounts of good. This is a beautiful cycle, though. This is a great one to take inspiration from if you have your sights on a really big, influential career.
I meet so many people in real life and online who freak out and feel so deflated because they think that their personal brand is ruined before it's actually even started. I really hope that today's zoomed out objective view on how these women have built resilience with their personal brands gives you the right kind of inspiration that you can absolutely keep on going in structuring your personal brand, even though you've hit a few pitfalls. What's great is that these women come from a multitude of different industries, yet they've managed to achieve personal branding success within the millions. I've been your host, Laura PEarman. This has been Mwah TV. Thank you so much for sticking around with me to the end today. If you've enjoyed learning about personal brands with me today, you're absolutely gonna love these episodes up next. This is how I put personal brands into action with real life clients. Mwah!
Now, before you go anywhere, don't forget to subscribe. Mwah.